everyone, welcome to our kitchen. Today we are going to show you how we make homemade noodles. Mackenzie's here to help me because we were planning on making chicken noodle soup for supper tonight. It is kind of blizzardy outside, so I thought today would be a great day to make some soup.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you how I make the noodles because noodles are a very good staple to have in the house at all the time. And it is also a great way of preserving eggs. And I said in an earlier video, maybe it was on my homesteading channel, that we are getting a lot of eggs and we aren't keeping up with the production. We are selling a few here and there, but this is a great way to use eggs to preserve it. Homemade noodles are shelf stable for 6 to 8 months, so this is a great way to also preserve your fresh eggs. Today I'm going to show you how to make it in the food processor. Most traditional way of doing it is just making a well of flour and putting your eggs in it and mixing it up that way. I like to use the food processor for this, just makes it simpler, and I know that it just seems to work every time. Today I'm going to show you how to make them with all-purpose flour. This is an unbleached all-purpose flour. The traditional noodles are made with 00 flour, which I know that King Arthur makes 00, and this makes for a really good noodle because this is the lowest protein flour that there is, but the all-purpose flour comes next in line with that. I would stay away from using bread flour or whole wheat flour because they have a higher level of protein, which makes the dough really hard to work with. It would be really hard to roll it out to a really thin noodle, and it's also just tougher. It's a tougher noodle. So if you want a nice noodle that tastes great, you can use all-purpose flour, or you could get the 00 flour. That works as well, and that actually makes a really good noodle. It's a little more expensive flour, and sometimes it's harder to find. Just depends on where you're located. So let's start. I have 2 cups of all-purpose flour that we're going to add right into the food processor. Alright, and to that I have 3 eggs, and these eggs I'm just gonna whisk up just a little bit. Go ahead and do that before we put it in. And I also have just a little bit of salt. Now, some people leave the salt out of their noodles and they add the salt when they put it in boiling water. They add the salt to the boiling water before cooking the noodles. So that's totally up to you. I am going to add a ½ teaspoon of salt to this. Okay, just a minute. We're gonna aerate this flour first before we add the eggs. So just fluff it a little bit and go ahead and add all 3 eggs. We're gonna mix these all together, and this will come together pretty quickly, maybe 30 seconds max. So okay, so as you can see, mine is a little bit crumbly and it's not coming together as nice as I want. It's still gonna come together, but I feel like it needs a little bit of water. So while it's mixing, add about a teaspoon of water at a time until you get to the right consistency. So once it starts forming a little ball inside here, you are going to go ahead and no, it's not crumbly. It's more of a ball. If you feel it, it would form a ball. It's not dry and it's not sticky. You don't want it sticky, but you don't want it dry. Okay, so we're gonna just go ahead and put this out on our work surface. If you're doing this by hand, like making a well and putting your egg in it and doing it that way, that takes a lot longer. So that could take up to 10 minutes or so of working the dough and kneading it up. So this is a lot faster. So I'm gonna just pour this out on the work surface here. And it's okay if there's a few crumbs because they'll work in together. Just wanna make sure that you get it all out of your bowl. And you may want to flour your work area just a little bit, not too much. And we're gonna go ahead and knead this for just a minute or so until it comes together and is nice and smooth. Okay, so we have our dough is kneaded through, and now it needs to rest because we've worked the gluten really hard and it needs time for that gluten to relax. So we're gonna give it about 20 to 30 minutes. We're gonna put it in a bowl and cover it so it doesn't dry out, and we will be back when we're ready to roll it out. In the meantime, we're gonna be making several batches of this because we're gonna preserve more eggs, and I'm actually gonna dehydrate a bunch of these for future use. So we will bring you back in about 30 minutes. I'm back. It's been longer than 20 or 30 minutes. It's been probably an hour, if I remember right. But I went outside and did some chores, and now I'm back in. It's been super cold out, so if I look all rosy red, it's because it's freezing cold out there and the wind is blowing. But our dough is soft, it's workable, and it is ready to get rolled out. So I'm gonna show you how I roll it out. Mackenzie is no longer here. She was just here for a little bit and then decided to go off and do other things. So I'm gonna roll these out on my own, I guess. My work surface here, I have just a light flour. You don't want your dough to stick, so you're gonna definitely to flour your countertop or your work surface. What I'm going to be using today is a pasta machine, which it's really inexpensive. I found mine at a garage sale for like $5 years ago. It was never used, had everything with it in the original box, everything, and I just happened to pick it up, and that was many years ago, and I still have it. Works great. It wasn't nothing expensive, probably $40 will get you a really nice one. So I'm going to be using the pasta machine. There also is attachments to like the KitchenAid mixer that you can get, and that makes rolling out the pasta dough simple also. But if you don't have a pasta machine and if you don't have an attachment to your mixer, the next best thing is to just roll it out by hand. What I'm going to do is the pasta machine, and so I'm going to divide the dough up into probably 6 portions. So divide it in half and then cut each half in 3. And we're going to work with one piece at a time. So while you're working with the one, you have to put the rest of them back. I put all of them in a baggie. I just thought it was easier than putting them all in separate bowls. So put these all back in the bag so that they don't dry out, because they do dry out fast. So what I'm going to be working with is just this piece of dough. My machine is called the Pasta Queen, and so it has different settings. It has for rolling out, it has the smoothness, and then it has one for like fettuccine, and then one roller for spaghetti. I'm going to be using the fettuccine because I like the wider egg noodle for soups. But first we have to put it through the smooth side so that we can roll it out real thin. So what I like to do is I just kind of work it out into like a little ball. This is if you have a machine. If you don't have a machine and you need to roll it out, you have to make sure that you let it set for at least 20 to 30 minutes. Otherwise your dough is going to be really hard to roll out and you're going to have to fight it more because of the gluten. Now mine is just has a handle on this side, and it has this knob on this side. I don't know if you can see this very well. So it has a knob on this side, which tightens the rollers as we get the dough thinner and thinner. So I start on the number 1. It goes all the way up to number 7, and we're just gonna start working it through here. Now I like to run it through number 1 twice. What I tend to do is fold it in half, kind of like this, so that way we try to get it to a, try it one more time, try to get it to a shape that we can work with here. And usually it doesn't matter, the shape isn't always, it's not always going to be perfect, and that doesn't matter. Also want to mention that when you're using this, you have to keep some flour on hand, because if you let this get too dry, it will start sticking, and that's not what you want. You want it to run through nice and smoothly. So I'm going to keep working through 1 through 7 and get this through. Now some people run it through twice on each setting. I don't do that. I don't find that it's necessary. And you'll see that it just keeps getting a little bigger and a little thinner each time we put it through. And does that ever happen? No. Sometimes I will run it through like number 6 or 7 twice if I feel like it could get a little bit thinner. And I usually just use my arm to catch it, and this is how thin we're gonna get it. We're gonna get it so that it is, I don't know if you can see through it, but it's pretty translucent. Like you can see your hand through it on the other side. So what I like to do is I have these tea cloths, or just a tea towel. That's what I call it. It's just a nice big white towel. You don't have to use these, but I like to drape them over the back of a chair. And then I take my dough and I just place it right over there. So it's gonna look like this. And then I just line them up, okay? And we want these to dry out for a little bit. So I just like, before I slice them into the noodles, I like to let them air dry for a while. Probably a good 15 more minutes. That way I don't have issues with my slicer. If you're gonna slice them by hand, you can do that without letting them dry. But when I run it through my machine, I find that it cuts it better with them dried out just a little bit more. So I'm gonna line up a couple chairs. I ended up making 4 batches, and each batch is like 1 pound of pasta. So I made about 4 pounds of pasta, and I'm gonna cut these all up, and I'm gonna roll these all out and then bring you back and show you the process of cutting the noodles. Alright, the dough is all rolled out, and it's taken me maybe a half hour or so. And I even have a couple over here. And so now we're going to start with the first ones that we did. They are quite a bit dry, and they should roll out really well. Alright, so we're going to start cutting these. This is my first one. Seems a little bit thicker than I had made the rest of them, but that's okay. I have lined a couple cookie sheets with some parchment paper, and that's what we're going to store our little, that's what we're going to place our noodles on once we cut them. I just have to switch from one hole to the next to get it to cut through this side. And since this one's not super long, and you can kind of tell it's not as, it's more crispy. I don't know how to describe it, but here, and it's just gonna take it through. So if you're left-handed, this works pretty good on this side. And then I take my other hand And I grab the noodles that are coming out from underneath. And I'm gonna go ahead and roll the whole pasta here. Some of them are falling. Okay, so this is what we're left with. And these are just little fettuccine noodles. So when they're dry like this, they just cut better. Now what you're going to want to do is line your parchment paper up with, or line your cookie sheet with some parchment, and then this is where flour is kind of your best friend. Make sure that you get them all well floured. If you don't flour them well now, they will end up sticking together, and then you're going to have like another ball of noodle dough if they stick together. So be sure to flour them real well. We let them sit and dry for a while before we put them in boiling water or in the soup or the dish that you're going to cook them with. That way they just have a little extra time to dry out, and then at that time you can shake off that extra flour that wasn't needed to keep them from sticking. This one here is a little bit longer, so what you might want to do is cut them. What I do is just take my dough cutter here and just slice it like this and make some a little bit more manageable size to work with, and then run them through just like this. Again, flour it really well. All right, this is all of the noodles that we made. Well, actually there's one more tray like this by the stove because I'm getting ready to put them in the soup. But I wanted to talk about dehydrating. I'm going to be putting these in a food dehydrator. It works really fast, but if you don't have a food dehydrator, you can just air dry them, and you would make them into little nests like this and separate them and make another little nest. But you can store them in a nest or lay them out flat, whatever way, and then just let them air dry. I have these on a towel, and put them out of the way where people won't get to them. Cover them with another towel so that dust doesn't get on them, but you can just let them sit for a few days, 2 or 3 days, and then check them for crispness. Once they are completely dry, they should have absolutely no moisture, and they should be crisp when you break them. Are you looking at me funny? No. Okay.
Anything I can snack on?
Nothing.
Nothing at all.
I want something to snack on.
Don't be so tall.
What? You don't taste like orange. Everything.